How's it going, my friend? It's Ryan Rhoades with Reformation Designs and the Creative Revolution podcast. This is season 2, episode 2, and today we are continuing our series with Rodney Vance on making your own films, and we're going live right now. Hello, everybody. It is Ryan Rhoades. I am the founder and creative director at Reformation Designs, and I am also the host of what you're listening to and watching right now. It is the Creative Revolution podcast, season 2, episode 2. Today we're talking about making your own films, and we're continuing our series on that topic with my good friend Rodney Vance. Rodney, always a pleasure. Thanks for tuning in today and being here. How are you?
Great to be here. Thanks for having me on again, Ryan.
Absolutely. Mary B says hello. Hi, Mary. How are you doing? Where are you watching from today? Just curious. I'm going to invite some friends here, see what happens. So yeah, we're talking today about making your own films. We had a little bit of technical issues the last time we were on, but we had a lot of really good conversations anyway. And so today we're going to be just picking right back up where we left off. So Rodney, we left off a couple of weeks ago talking about basically some recommendations that you might have for people who are starting their own films and who maybe aren't necessarily sure what to do next and how to get started, or they're kind of in that analysis paralysis space. So curious what it is, if anything, just off the top of your head. What kind of advice would you give to those people?
Filmmaking has two basic components. There's the art and there's the business. And both of them have to work to make a successful film. So let me talk, if I may, about the
Absolutely.
art for a couple of minutes first, and then we'll get into the business and the mechanics of actually how to do this, how to get from where you are to where you want to go. On the art side, ask yourself, as a potential filmmaker or as a person about to make a film, and it doesn't really matter whether this is your first film or your 50th film, this is still a good question to ask. And that is, what do you believe in? What do you want to communicate? What do you care about? What's important to you? What do you want to contribute to the conversation? And the advantage of being an independent filmmaker as opposed to a studio filmmaker, where you sort of have to make the film the studio wants you to make. As an independent filmmaker, you have the luxury of asking yourself these questions and answering specifically for yourself what it is that's important to you. And then create a story or find a story that communicates one of these ideals that you strongly care about. The reason it's important to actually care about the message of your film, or the point of your film, or if you're an English major, the theme of your film. The reason that's important is because filmmaking is hard. And when you get to that point in your filmmaking where you're ready to just cry yourself asleep at night and you never want to speak to anyone again for the rest of your life, it's important to remember why you're doing this in the first place.
Right.
So find that story or create that story that communicates something that you truly and deeply care about. And then the next thing, and this is particularly true of beginning filmmakers, although more advanced filmmakers can also fall into this, it's easy to tell a story that becomes very shallow, like a sketch or a skit. The difference between a Saturday Night Live skit and even something that's not particularly profound, but more profound than a Saturday Night Live skit such as the movie Mall Cop, is simply if you don't have obstacles of any size, then when you give your character hope, the hope simply becomes sentimentality, because it's hope based against very small obstacles, and so it's sentimental, and we can go, oh, that's sweet, but that's as far as it goes.
So it's really kind of meditating on a lot of the Joseph Campbell, hero's journey mythos in some
Absolutely.
senses.
And you have to have those obstacles. That's very much a part of the storytelling journey. It's Act 2, actually.
Mm-hmm.
when you have hope in the face of obstacles, that's a much stronger choice. And to quote an old actor phrase, when actors make choices, the go-to phrase is love is the strongest choice. So sentimentality is a weak choice with weak obstacles. Hope in the face of strong obstacles is a stronger choice, and love is the strongest choice of all. If you can find that in your story, no matter who your characters are, find the love in it, you will find that that's the most universal, the most compelling kind of storytelling that there is. So that's the art of it, is finding that that story that connects with your own individual passion and allows you to make the strongest choice possible.
So, can you give me an example of probably like a well-known film or a well-known movie where you see that principle play out, like in an ideal situation?
I'll acknowledge that lately on Netflix, I have watched a few episodes of a show for young adults called Troll Hunters.
Okay,
Not exactly profound
sure.
there, but it's really fun. And the troll hunter in the series is a high school boy who is chosen by an amulet to defend his town and his world. And the reason that he is chosen by the amulet for this is that he is a boy who has learned how to love. He cares for his mother, he cares for his friends. And the single qualifying component that enables him to be the hero is that choice, that strongest choice, which is to love. There's a very simple example that's from a very popular series, and it's not particularly profound at all.
I've not actually come across it, so I'm gonna write it down and take a look at it. I'm always interested in checking out new series and just seeing the similar threads of storytelling that go through and are kind of repeated, but just in different ways. So I appreciate that. Very cool. So moving on to the next question, and if anybody's watching or listening, either if you're watching live or on the replay, definitely let us know if you've got a question for Rodney or for me, and I will do my best to get to those questions on the show here. And if you're watching on the replay, then I'll get back to you, later on. So the next question that I had here, and this is something that I've been meditating on a lot lately myself, is, Rodney, what is one thing that creators, filmmakers, just people in general can stop doing, start doing, or do differently starting today that you think would most improve the quality of their life and work?
Okay, sure. Filmmaking and pretty much any kind of life work that you do takes a tremendous amount of energy and strength. If you really get passionate into something, you don't sleep as much as you should, and that kind of thing. So I would say probably the single most important thing that you can do is to exercise, ironically. And that's something you can start today. Get in a half hour a day of decent exercise, fast walking or running or push-ups or whatever it is that we do. Something that gets your blood moving and makes you stronger so that you can get through what is actually a very physically demanding process. Eat well, try to get as much sleep as you can. Maybe number two beyond that would be organize your space.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Finding stuff.
Say that again.
Organizing your space so you don't waste a lot of time finding stuff, and instead, you have a place where, okay, all the stuff related to taxes goes in here, all the stuff related to, casting goes in here, whatever it is you're doing, have a place for it, and then you're doing your organizing on the fly and on the run, so it has to work for you, but finding some sort of an organizational system for your workspace can save you hours and hours and
Oh
time.
yeah. I mean, I'm curious, how do you do that with your life? Like, do you do color coding? Do you have like file cabinets? Because I find it's very fascinating for me just on a nerdy level to kind of find out how people stay productive in what they do.
I use binders a lot, white binders. I use notebooks like, like this one.
Hmm.
Just spiral notebooks where you keep all of the notes related to one particular project are in the green notebook, and another project are in the red notebook, and another one's in the yellow notebook. So I use that. Files, yes, file folders. I used to live in Napa Valley, so I have a bunch of also wooden wine boxes that they use to ship wine bottles in.
Okay.
And you can just label it and say, okay, this is for this project. And everything related to that project goes into that box.
Sure.
So that you may not have it organized within the box, but it's in the box, so it doesn't take quite as long to find
Right.
it. And the box itself keeps things relatively neat. It's neater than a pile, and you can stick it in the closet or something and pull it out when you need to. So all of those kinds of things.
Sure.
And so much of filing now happens on the computer, and I find that incredibly difficult to keep up with because you got to take all these electronic documents and stick them in a file folder. It's exactly the same.
Yep.
And putting paper into a filing cabinet.
Yeah. The nice thing about digital though is that I don't have to worry about losing it. Like, I can't search my file cabinet. I wish I could. Like, if I could just type something.
You're right. That's the great thing. I could go into the search menu, and if I could just remember what I called the file.
Yeah, it's just what I just need, like one word from this file name.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's surprising how often I forget even that one word.
Well, one of the things just on a practical level that has been really helpful for me, we've basically got like two main divisions of our business, our design agency. So we have like the services side of things where we're helping people with their branding, with their websites, creating graphics, helping them publish books, all this different stuff. So we've got kind of like the services side of things, and then we also have like the products division where we're creating our own clothing, and we've got stuff that we sell in our online store, and like books that we're writing and publishing and all this stuff.
That's very smart.
And so in my filing, the way that I organize it, I have like one big folder that just says portfolio. And then when I double click on portfolio, it breaks down into topics. So I'll have a folder for writing. I'll have a folder for like design originals. So that will be everything from, just the original files. And then I have those organized by like subject matter. So if it's like an inspirational thing, if it's abstract art, if it's like clothing production, so we have it kind of organized into these different tiers. But then like within my writing folder, I have a folder for blog posts. I have a folder for books that we've published. I have a folder for books that are in process. And so this is all like, I used to have just literally Post-it notes everywhere, stacks of folders and all this other stuff. And like, I remember I just got to a point, I'm like, I will never be able to sustain a creative career unless I force myself to get organized and organize my space. So that's just a little bit about that. But if you're watching or listening and you haven't figured out how to kind of organize your own space, definitely meditate on that. And so just a quick thing here too, if you're watching live, I'm testing out this new thing that Facebook is saying to do. It's like I can take a poll while we're doing this live video. So right. I just published a poll that says, what is stopping you from making your own creative projects or films? And so there's like 3 choices. I feel like I don't know what to do next. I don't think I have a story worth telling. And then the other one is like, I don't actually have any desire to pursue my creativity, which probably isn't too many of you watching, but feel free to answer those questions and we'll kind of address that. I'm just kind of largely curious and nerdy to see how this works. So Rodney, in terms of some of the biggest mistakes that you see new or aspiring filmmakers making, like what are some of those things, and how would you encourage people to get better at those?
Always remember that people, and this is something that a lot of beginning filmmakers forget, but always remember that people watch a movie for the story. They watch a movie to emotionally escape from their day-to-day life. They watch a movie to learn something, to grow, to experience something new. Nobody ever watches a movie unless there's some sort of technical geek person. People in general don't watch movies for the technology. Um,
Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean?
Nobody in the general audience that goes to see a movie, they're not looking at it to say, "Wow, I really hated that movie because the color correction was wrong," or "I really hated that movie because some other issue." It's
It's like
important.
I
to
hated
get
that
the
movie because
technology
this was
correct.
clearly filmed with a red Series 5 camera, or
Yeah, instead of an R8. Yeah, exactly. Or it was digital instead of film, or whatever the debate is. That's exactly right. Thank you for that additional example. That's very helpful. Uh, the uh, the technology has to be good enough to not get in the way. That's essentially it. And I happen to really love technology. I like technology that gives me a great picture. I love wonderful sound, all of that kind of thing. But ultimately, people care about a story or they don't care about a story. And they decide whether or not they like a film based on whether or not they like the story. So the story is everything. And when you're getting started, you don't need then to have hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars worth of gear. You need a story. And if your story is good, then you can film on a cell phone camera, and you can use one of the 6 top free editing software programs on your laptop computer to edit it. And you can post it on YouTube or find whatever other digital platform or submit it to film festivals. A lot of them will take it even with that, as long as your story is strong.
right?
So you can certainly start your filmmaking career and start discovering how to better connect with an audience with relatively simple, relatively cost-effective gear. I mean, a cell phone is still expensive.
But most people have them at this point,
But most people already have it. It's multiple use,
right?
and you're using it for your phone, you're using it for your email or whatever else, text messages.
Right.
So also just use it for your camera, and it's good enough to get you started and to learn how to use framing, how to tell a story,
Right.
and how to, as a director, focus the attention of your audience, how to force them to look more closely into how to find the information they need for their story by putting the important stuff in the background or by directing the eye to the corner of the screen, which then takes them to the next frame. All of these kinds of things you learn primarily through practice. And you can do that with a cell phone and with free editing software on your laptop computer. So if you have a cell phone and a laptop, you're good to go for getting started in creating movies.
Do you have any recommendations for software to check out?
I have a Macintosh computer, so
Okay.
I like iMac. There's also, what is it called?
It's like
Magic?
iMovie. I know,
iMovie, yeah.
not Logic. Logic's for music. Final Cut Pro is like a couple $100 on for the Mac
Yeah,
if you want.
exactly. I don't particularly have a recommendation of one of these over another.
Sure.
Just they're all good enough to practice with and
Right.
learn with, and actually tell very powerful stories with.
Well, there's even
Uh,
software. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
that's it. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, especially if you're like using your cell phone, and you have a smartphone that's been made or manufactured in the last like 5 years at
Yeah,
least. You have like a full scale production studio in your pocket, and most people just
that's
don't
right.
know it. They don't know how to use it, or they just use it for mindlessly browsing social media or the internet, or just whatever. But the level of technology and the power of the internals of those devices are light years ahead of what filmmakers had, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And at some level, like, you can, at least people who are just getting started, like you said, you used to have, thousands of dollars to make something that looked semi decent. But nowadays, with some color correction, even within apps on your phone, you can create like a cinematic look. And people can argue about whether or not it's good enough. But like you said, if the story is on point and you're really connecting at a deep emotional level with the message that you're sharing and the people you're sharing it with, it doesn't matter.
That's right. And so as long as you're making films at your expense, that's what I would do. And just really master the craft of storytelling, read books on storytelling, master as much as you can of framing and other kinds of techniques, and really learn as much as you can. You will know that you're ready for a more advanced form of filmmaking, which is when you're making films that cost more and you're using other people's money to make those films. You'll know that you're ready for that when other people are willing to put their money into making the film. That's the key.
Right. And so do you find that most people, for lack of a better term, if they say they want to get into filmmaking or any kind of creative pursuit really, but they use like the lack of technology or lack of connections or money or whatever, do you usually find that people who use that stuff are largely just kind of not making excuses for not getting started?
I don't know that I fully followed that question, Ryan. Are you saying that if they're not using more advanced technology, they're using that as an excuse? Or go ahead.
No. Meaning, like, do you find that? I guess for me, whenever I talk with people about the creative process in general, I hear a lot of what seems to be just kind of excuses that they've told themselves for not getting started. And I'm a big proponent, like you said, of using what you have where you are and allowing what you create with what you've got to kind of propel you to the next level and take you to the next stage.
I fully support that idea, and my apologies for not paying sufficient attention to the question. Wherever, if you decide you want to use film to tell a story and to communicate your ideas and your passion, if you absolutely can't afford anything, you don't even have a cell phone, well, then do stuff on stage. You just start with whatever is available to you, whatever is at hand. Get your friends to, write a script and get your friends to act it. You'd be amazed how many filmmakers start that way. It's really just about, what do I have? What can I do with this that I have in front of me? And then go from there and build on it. And as you get successful with what you have, then more resources will show up and you do more. When you are ready to start doing things with other people's money, then, once you've started and you're ready to get to that, then there are all kinds of return on investment projects that you can do as well. You don't have to, money is not the only potential return on investment. It's the most obvious one, where you say, if you give me $50,000 to make this film, based on my market research and all of that kind of stuff, we're going to generate a return of $150,000, and you'll make 3 times what you need, which is better than the stock market and all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
Well, you can write those business plans, and frankly, if you've got something that's like this commercial and likely to make a cash return on investment, then yeah, by all means, write the business plans, and there's plenty of books out on how to do that. Write the business plans and do what you need to do. And I'm looking at some notes here because I jotted down some ways to get some return on investment that are other than cash. So
Sure.
You can do things for causes, like if someone is very big on breast cancer research or something like that, you can make a story that deals with that and helps get the message out about that. And you'll find people in that world who are willing to support that cause. It can be a cause that's a do-gooder cause, or a charity such as breast cancer. It can also be a corporate cause like Costco. One of our students just went off to Washington State. We lost him as a student because he was making films here while working as a sales clerk at Costco, and he found out he was a film major. So they said, let's put you in our media department up in Washington State. And now he's making a very good living.
Oh, wow.
And we weren't even getting through all 4 years of film school. Movies for prestige. There are, you can get prestige for an organization by sending a movie to film festivals and having it win awards and that kind of thing. You can also generate prestige by saying to a client who wants to help you fund it, say, look, you can bring your customers onto the set. And so maybe you're not going to make any money on this directly from the film, but you'll make money by being able to bring your own clients onto a set and be able to say, yeah, we're funding this and this is really cool.
Oh, okay.
You can do it for PR, public relations, for corporate brand building. Budweiser does this a lot. And so does Red Bull, for example.
My sister works for Red Bull, so I see a lot of it.
Exactly. And you can do it. So all of those kinds of things. And then you can also do it for money, where you're trying to get a return on investment, where you're earning a profit for your investors. So when you're ready to get into the money-making side of it, or the bit where you're no longer able to pay for the film and the production yourself, these are some of the pathways that are available to you to generate a return on investment that includes money, but maybe there are other things, so that even if your film is a money loser, it still gives an appropriate return on investment to your investors. And as long as you're clear that that's what the return on investment is going to be instead of cash, then everything's fine. You just don't want to lead your investor into believing one thing and then not being able to deliver on what they're expecting.
Right. So it's a lot about just making sure that expectations are clear before you actually sign anything or get started on a project, because you don't want to be, putting all this effort in and then you find out that, either the person you're working with doesn't really agree with you on X, Y, or Z. And so it's really just about establishing those expectations when you get started.
So make sure you're telling a story that you care about. Start with what you have, whatever it is that you have. Make films with your cell phone, whatever it is. As you get better and you start wanting to make films that are expensive enough that it requires the involvement of other people's money, think through a strategy of what kind of return on investment you can promise to your investors, and then make sure you deliver. That's the short answer of how to make movies. And any of those we can go into in much greater detail, but that's the short answer summary.
Yeah, that works really good, and I'll be able to clip that out as a nice soundbite. So, very cool. So on top of all of that, inevitably, and like you said earlier, inevitably in the process of making the film or in the process of writing the manuscript or whatever, life has this funny way of just showing up and trying to prevent you from creating these things. Stephen Pressfield in The War of Art talks about resistance.
Great book, by the way.
Yeah, excellent book. And so for you, how do you dance with that resistance? How do you overcome the struggles that we all face as creators and entrepreneurs? So things like procrastination, disappointment, rejection, etc.
Number one, avoid judgment of yourself, because that doesn't feed your creativity. Number two, sit down and get to work. Whether you feel like it or not. There's really no other way to do it. If you're waiting for inspiration to strike, or waiting for the time to be right, or waiting to feel like it, or waiting until your office is perfectly organized, even though I suggested that earlier, you'll never do it. There will always be something else that is more pressing in the moment. But like anything else that's worth doing, ultimately you have to keep the long-term goal in mind and make that a part of what's going on. Those choices are never easy to make. because things that really don't matter in the long term matter greatly in the next 2 hours.
Hmm. Can you
Or in the
give
next
me
one.
a recent example?
Well, I'm a department chair in the film department, and we have committees and we have reports that have to be written, and they are incredibly important, and they have to be written. And if you spend all of your time doing those things, you will never get anything that actually accomplishes the goal of the film department done. You'll just get all this paperwork done, and you get
Right.
to the end of the year, and you discover that you have written a tremendous amount of paperwork that virtually no one has ever read or ever will read. And it doesn't really matter at all that you've generated it as you have been requested to do, and you have never made a film or done anything creative, which is the only thing that your students care about, and really the only thing that the university wants from their film department. And yet you haven't done that because you spent all this time working on all this other kind of nonsense.
Right.
Um,
So
and yet,
don't be prolific in work that is frivolous, if at all
yeah,
possible.
work that is, or at least work that is less important. It's important to keep the stuff that there is stuff that like these reports have to be written for accreditation. It's not something you can just ignore, but you
Sure.
try to write them as quickly and as cavalierly as you possibly can. Get them off your desk, and have a day for reports and get all your reports done and turn them in, and then do something else.
So a lot of it, I mean, it sounds to me like, and I see this across all kinds of different creative spectrums. It doesn't matter if it's filmmaking, writing books, or doing music or whatever. So much of this really does boil down to discipline and figuring out how to be efficient and prolific at your art despite the resistance that shows up, and using systems that you've kind of designed for yourself that will help you get to your goal quicker.
Discipline is the right word in many ways, but in other ways, there's some negative connotations to that word.
Sure.
I would maybe say it instead, make a point of taking, maybe while you're doing your exercises in the morning or whatever, reminding yourself of the life you want to live. Live the life you want to live instead of the life other people want you to live. That's a much more positive way to say it.
Absolutely. But it's so hard to do that though. I mean, it doesn't, I mean, I guess it doesn't have to be, but there's such an external pressure, or at least it can feel like that for me.
We are taught from a very early age to do what we are told.
Right.
And so we have this innate desire to do what we are told, and to be liked by our family, to be liked by our peers, to be liked by our bosses, and to please them and be liked by them. We do these things for them, and so we are living the life that they choose for us to live. And to a certain extent, of course, we have to do that. We have to accommodate it. There's always balance, but make sure that the balance always stays weighted in favor of living the life you choose to live. It goes ultimately to quality of life. You don't want to get to the end of your life and look back and say, wow, I never lived my life. And filmmaking may be your life and it may not be your life, but it's hard enough that if it's not something you're choosing to do because you want to, then why on earth are you doing it? It may be that your life is spending time hiking in the mountains, or spending time sitting on the sand and meditating by the beach. Whatever it is that is living your life, that's what you need to do. And find it. And I'd say that in the full awareness that we all have to earn a living, we all have to pay the bills, et cetera, et cetera. But to the extent we can possibly afford it, and yes, money is a factor, to the extent that we can afford it, it is very, very important that we live our own life, the life that we choose, and we discover what that is, and we live it.
So have you, on that note, have you found I know at least a lot of the people that I coach and clients that I work with and people who are trying to like make their ideas happen. This is a recurring theme that they run into where they're like, they're starting a project or they're doing something new and like their family isn't supportive or their friends just kind of make fun of them for it. What advice would you give to those people? I mean, I usually tell people like you need to get new friends and don't tell people who are going to hate on you that what you're working on, like do the project and then show them like, hey, I did this thing, instead of telling them and then having them discourage you in the process.
Yeah, you can make a movie with your cell phone without, your immediate family sort of has to know what's going on. There's pretty much no way you can conceal it from people who are living in the same house with you. But beyond that, there's an awful lot you can do by just saying, I'm just going to do this, and I'm not going to ask anyone else. I'm just going to go do it. And so you do it. At the point where you're accepting other people's money to do it, then it becomes more public. There's almost no way to hide that. You just have to do it. But by then, you've done it enough times, at least theoretically, and if other people are putting money into it, you're already good enough that if someone is telling you at that point, oh, you can't do this, well, someone else is paying me to do it, so I'm doing it.
So, I mean, a lot of it really just boils down. I mean, I think that when you're dealing with things like criticism and especially nowadays, the thing that I tell a lot of people to keep in mind is always check the source of that criticism. Like, do they have the authority to make this critique? Is it constructive? Is the information that they're giving, is it actually going to help me make a better final product or make my life better? Or is it just some, person who's just miserable and they're just wanting to spew that?
Want to share their misery with you?
Yeah. So check the source of the criticism before you actually
what's the motivation? What's their agenda? What's going on with them? Why are they so opposed to what it is that they're trying to do?
Exactly. So, very cool. So, moving on to, and if there's anything in particular that's you really have on your heart and on your mind that you want to talk about, feel free to just say, hey, can we talk about this? Because I'm just going off of it.
I think I've gotten out some of the things that are on my heart that I'm passionate about already.
Okay, very cool. So you mentioned a couple times, reading certain books to really help learn about the craft and really learning the art of storytelling. So do you have a handful of books? Like if you work at a school on this stuff, so it's like if you could create your own kind of 101 filmmaking course that you would just say, read these books, and if you read and apply these books, like you will be better than like 95% of people who are even considering this. Like, do you have a list of those?
Yeah, I think for the storytelling part of it, Christopher Vogler's book, which I think you mentioned earlier in this conversation, The Writer's Journey, which is built around the ideas of Joseph Campbell and The Hero's Journey and other books that he's written, is a very good source of storytelling. That's one of many books that are very good on storytelling on paper, script writing. You can also go online and look up script writing format and learn the basic rules of formatting, which are important as you move toward being a professional writer, to learn how to make it look like you know what you're talking about just by the way you lay things out on the page. To get into business plans and so on, to make your movie, shoot, if I could turn my back to you, I could probably turn around and pull a couple books off the shelf.
I won't be offended at all.
All right.
It's totally fine. You're sitting in front of all these books, so. I'm sitting in front of a green screen. I'm not actually sitting in a cartoon set, for those who are not aware of that.
All right. Well, here's a stack of books I'm producing right here.
Excellent.
We refer to a lot. One that I like is Contracts for the film and television industry. Let's see. How do I get that in front of me?
That works.
Contracts for the film and television industry. It's just a book full of the kinds of contracts you need. There's a writer employment agreement that I just opened to. Actor offer letter, short form copyright assignment. It's just a bunch of contracts that, as you're making films, it's nice to have these. They're just cheaper than a lawyer.
Right.
Uh, so in that case, in some ways, you're practicing law without a license, as the lawyers tell me all the time when I start.
This is not legal advice. Disclaimer.
This is not legal advice. This is a book
Information
that I'm showing.
purposes
That's all it
only.
is. Here's another one that I like. This one is called The Complete Film Production Handbook.
Okay.
Everything's backwards from my point of view. So
Not on my side here. So.
That's crazy, isn't it? Complete Film Production Handbook by Eve Light Honthaner, Honthaner.
Okay.
And that just takes you step by step through the whole process of producing a film. And it does have some sample contracts and so on as well, including mileage reimbursement forms and invoicing and all that kind of stuff. It tells you, it has release forms, and it really goes through very carefully on a step-by-step basis all the things you need to know, including the things you know to properly work with the guilds.
Okay.
And to meet their deadlines and that sort of thing. I find it to be an invaluable resource. Independent Filmmakers Manual. I won't put this one up in front of the screen because it makes everybody busy. This is from what used to be called IFP in Los Angeles. Is now called Find Film Independent.
Okay.
Independent Filmmakers Manual. Oh, some broader advice, producer to producer, low budget independent film producing, deal making in the film and television industry, from negotiations and final contracts. So a lot of the work of a producer has to do with business.
Right.
Of that sort. And so having books that you can refer to that teach you what to watch out for, and these are all kinds of things that are useful. So you have the script, you have some books that will help you through the business on a step-by-step basis. That then it's books on cinematography, books on directing. These are pretty common.
Sure.
Not hard to find, and that will help you pay attention to what you need to do to tell your story visually. I don't know, does that give you enough information? Does that help?
Oh yeah, that's excellent. I wrote all those down, and Brent put them in the comments here on Facebook for anyone who's watching this on Facebook.
Man, you guys are quick.
Yeah, so we got a whole bunch of stuff going on here. I'm actually producing the show, answering comments, taking notes, and talking to you at the same time. So
you're better at multitasking, Ryan, than I am.
Well, that's part of filmmaking, folks. You have to get good at multitasking.
It is. You've got everything it takes.
Yeah. So I can right now here, watch here, for those who are watching, I could make a word balloon pop up just like that.
Look at that.
It's magic. It's like the magic of filmmaking. It's just computers and stuff, but it's fun to learn how to use it. Very cool. So yeah, I mean, we've got about 12 to 15 minutes or so left. If anybody's watching and has any questions for Rodney, now's a great time to bring that up. In the meantime, Rodney, do you have any other pointers or tips that you'd like to share? Just general kind of practical stuff.
Part of what we talked about in part one of this, maybe I can bring up again just briefly. Yeah. And that is why storytelling is so powerful, why we tell stories. I think storytelling is the primary language of our humanity. We tell stories with a beginning, middle, and end because that's the process of growth that we go through, starting with recognizing that there's something we want to change, experiencing the obstacles to that change that go with growth, and then ultimately either succeeding in growing or failing, which corresponds to beginning, middle, and end in storytelling. The depth of the obstacles, the reality of the obstacles are what give a story weight. Whether it's comedy or drama, it doesn't really matter. Comedy tends to be social obstacles. Drama tends to be life-threatening or moral obstacles. But this is why human beings tell stories. This is how we teach our children. This is how we grow. This is how we become human in many very real ways. And so anyone who gets in your way and tells you that storytelling is a trivial pursuit, that it's not a good or respectable way to earn a living. Um, these are people that fundamentally don't understand the value and role of storytelling in human existence. There's a reason that storytelling goes all the way back to the most primitive human beings sitting around a fire.
Do you think that you could, to give a throwback to Christopher Vogler and Joseph Campbell, do you think that some of those people who are telling filmmakers that story is not important, do you think they would qualify as threshold guardians?
Yeah, I think so. And the term threshold guardians, the way Joseph Campbell and Christopher Vogler use it, are those who test us to see the level of our commitment to this journey that we're about to undertake. Whatever that journey is, whether it's creating a film or whether it's stopping smoking or whether it's learning how to play tennis, it doesn't really matter what it is. This new journey of growth, how committed are we to it? And if we get to the threshold and we go, oh, it's too hard, or oh, I don't have this, or oh, I'm too busy with this or that, well, that's perfectly fine. It just means we're not going to undertake that journey and we're not going to learn whatever that particular skill is that we've set out to learn. And we don't have time to learn everything. So threshold guardians are very useful to us. They tell us to not waste our time on stuff we really don't care all that much about.
Right. Absolutely. So Mary has a question from Italy, and it says, any advice for people filming in the follow documentary / reality world? So Mary, for those of you who don't know, she's overseas right now filming a documentary series with her music called Finding Harmony. So Mary, feel free to post links to that in the comments here on Facebook.
I'd love to see that when it's done.
Yeah. So
Thank you for the question.
So do you have any suggestions for people in that space, Rodney?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. And the answer is that it's very much the same as when you are creating a fictional story. A documentary story obviously is based in some form of reality, evidence-based reality. But a good documentary will still be structured into a beginning, middle, and end. It's not just a series of images. I mean, if that was the case, you could literally put up a camera out on the street corner and run it for an hour and say, wow, look at that. Isn't that a great documentary? It's a slice of life. And you would be absolutely correct. It's a slice of life of whatever's going on in that street corner. And if the street corner is Times Square, it might even be interesting.
Yeah.
But
the chances are not so much.
And because in order to be a story, it has to have a beginning, middle, and end, even if it's a documentary story. So yours is about musicians. Can you repeat?
Yeah, Mary, can you give Rodney just a broad overview of kind of the goal that you have with it? If you're still watching here, I think you are. But as far as I've seen it, Rodney, a lot of it was her meeting up with musicians that she's never met in person and never played music with, and then filming, doing like music shows in other countries with these artists and kind of that journey. But in terms of
a potential structure for a show like that, and there are many potential structures, so that I'm not saying this is how you should do it. You will have your own approach, but a potential structure is you are this storyteller who is really interested in telling a story about these musicians. You don't know them, you have no idea how to get in touch with them. So your beginning is saying, let's making it clear why you want to tell the story, and simply getting in touch with the musicians, and then there'll be lots of obstacles with that. And as you move forward, as you connect with these musicians, you say, let's do a show. And there'll be many obstacles with that. Contracts, rights, all kinds of stuff will come up. And as you deal with those obstacles, and then at the end, you either produce a successful musical concert or you don't. So there's your beginning, middle, and end in a basic nutshell. And you'll probably have since you actually thought about this, you'll probably have a much more interesting way to tell the story than what I just laid out.
She said she's singing in harmony with artists in different countries.
Oh, wow, that is beautiful. I really want to see this. You have some technological obstacles right off of that occur to me, but...
She said, we got robbed last week, so that may be a middle. A terrible time, but an interesting story. The time with the musicians has been so wonderful, though, and healing after the robbery.
Yeah, there you go. That does very much sound like a part of your middle with your obstacles. So the beginning, in a nutshell, you find out who your protagonist is, what it is that they want, and who or what is standing in the way. Your middle is all those obstacles that come up, and how your protagonist deals with those obstacles ultimately. If you really want to get sophisticated, there comes a point near the end of the second act where your protagonist, your hero, is ready to give up because the obstacles are so severe, you don't see how you can possibly succeed in what you set out to do. But ultimately, there is some slim chance of moving forward, and you seize that opportunity and you do move forward with it and have the final showdown between your protagonists and obstacles, or your protagonists and antagonists. And either the concert happens or it doesn't. Either the people all end up singing with each other or they don't. And in your case, it sounds like there's going to be at the end of this a very wonderful concert.
I'm super excited.
From all around the world, which sounds absolutely fantastic and reminiscent of Beethoven's Ode to Joy, and the way the street musicians sometimes come together and make that happen, which I love, by the way.
Mary, can you do like a can you do like a flash mob somewhere where like everybody just starts singing in harmony? That'd be amazing. It takes some coordination, but it'd be fun. And you should totally, I don't know if you've already done this, Mary, but have you thought about like trying to crowdfund to replace the gear? I don't know if you've already asked for help or not. I've been super busy myself, but that would be certainly a way that you could say like, hey, for those of you who are watching and believe in me and want to see us progress through Act 2 here, and it's like, can you raise some funding to replace the gear that was lost, and then you end up with gear that was better than you had whenever you got robbed, that kind of thing.
And this is the kind of story that you can fund from donors who are not expecting cash back, but who you can say, look, this is just fun. Let's do this because it's loads of fun. Let's do it because it promotes peace on earth. Let's do it because it's just a good thing to do and fun thing to be a part of. And this is how much money we need to do it. And you want to be part of it. We'll put your name in the credits or whatever, put your name up on IMDb and make you a part of this global flash mob that is going to do this together. And people will contribute to that just because they want to be part of something that's positive in their life. And
yep.
That's all it takes. They don't expect to get their money back, let alone a profit.
Yeah.
In fact, the profit motive becomes almost too crass and too commercial. It's like, no, we're doing this because this is like investing in a day at Disneyland. We're just doing this because it's a fun way to spend some time and a part of our lives.
Man, I got to on that. I got to spend some time. It was the first time I'd actually been able to go to Disneyland, like not as a kid. And so I had some friends that lived in LA at the time, and their grandfather had like worked there forever. And so he was like, he could just give out free tickets and all kinds of stuff. And so,
that's fantastic.
So we got to go, and we didn't have to wait in like hardly any of the lines, just because we knew this guy. And it was like near the end of the night, when the park was closing, and we got to go on, I think, was it Space Mountain? We got to go on that ride like 6 times in a row, and it was, because most people, it's like you go to Disneyland, you wait an hour and a half to go on something, and you get to go on like 3 rides.
I know, most of the time you go to Disneyland, you're paying a lot of money to stand in line.
Yeah,
this way is much better.
Yeah, and so I mean, it was such a awesome experience, and just knowing that like you can create those kinds of emotional connections and those kind of experiences with storytelling, with filmmaking, with music and all these things, and just knowing that there's so many people working behind the scenes to create those experiences has always just been a fascinating and encouraging thing for me. And like you said, Rodney, people want to be part of that. They want to help create those awesome experiences. So
those experiences change the world. They may not change it by much, but they change it.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I think that's pretty much all that I had for today. So, Rodney, how is it that how is it that people can check out your latest work? And I know we have NapaValleyDreams.com on the banner here. So can you talk a little bit about how people can get in touch with you? You know, a little call to action, something like that.
NapaValleyDreams.com has a trailer and information about an IMAX film, or it's not IMAX, it's giant screen. It was at one point IMAX, now it's giant screen. Film that I made about the Napa Valley, with the first documentary film to be released using Dolby Atmos sound technology. And you'll see a trailer for the film at NapaValleyDreams.com and get some information about the film. To actually see the film, it's now being distributed online as well on YouTube. So just go to Napa Valley Dreams on YouTube and you should be able to find it. The film that I made after that, there's a very short film. Napa Valley Dreams is about 40 minutes long. I made another film called The Butterfly, the Harp, and the Timepiece, which is about 10 minutes long, starring Academy Award winner Melissa Leo, and also some of the band members of a group called Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros. If you're a fan of theirs, there 2 or 3 of the members of that band, including the lead singer, are in the cast. That you can see on Amazon.com. It's available for free if you have Amazon Prime. It'll cost you, I don't know, a couple bucks, I think, if you don't. So just when you're on Amazon, type in The Butterfly, the Harp, and by then the rest of it should start showing up.
Yeah, very cool. Brent, if you're able to find that and drop it in the comments, we'll definitely do that here, so anyone watching on Facebook can see that too. So very cool. Well, Rodney, I really appreciate the time. Any last words before I kind of do my little spiel here?
Stories are important. Take your time, tell good stories, have a lot of fun.
The fun part is something that I think, especially whenever a lot of us get into the business side of things, that we can neglect. And I think that it actually helps business do better when you have fun with it.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, guys, so that's all we have for today. If you have watched the whole way through here and are interested in some giveaways, you know that I'm a big proponent of making stuff happen and bringing stuff out of the digital world into the physical world. I think it's super cool. So we have, in the spirit of Halloween coming up here, we have the Absolute Essential Zombie Coloring Book. This is a coloring book that my friend Brent and I put together. And so you can see we're zombified on the back there. So we've created this coloring book, and we're going to be giving away some of them. So if you would like one, definitely just drop a comment in the comments thread here and send me a message with your mailing address. And if you are watching long enough to see this, I'm happy to mail one of these out to you. So thank you for tuning in this long. If you're interested in a zombie coloring book, please drop your name and send us a message, and I will get that over to you. Also, if you haven't yet, go to scienceofgettingrich.info and pick up a copy of my latest book. It's one that I republished from, it was originally published in 1910 by a guy named Wallace Wattles. And this book is excellent, excellent, excellent for helping you manifest and monetize your ideas. So you can get yours on Amazon, or you can just go to scienceofgettingrich.info and see that there. And additionally, if you want to help bring your ideas to life, you're a business owner who wants to brand yourself and get your own website and do all of that stuff, go to logos.reformdesigns.biz and check out our branding packages, and we will help you with that. And last but not least, if you haven't already, sign up for our VIPs list at reformdesigns.biz/VIPs. You'll get a free copy of my first book in ebook form, as well as a workbook on how to make your own ideas happen, how to beat procrastination. So definitely do that. That's all I've got for today. Thanks for listening and watching the Creative Revolution podcast. Today we were here with Rodney Vance from NapaValleyDreams.com. Rodney, thanks again for being here, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks very much. Pleasure.
Thanks for watching, everybody. We will talk to you next time. Cheers.